Hey guys, this is Joe D with the Roundhouse Report. I want to talk today about genocide. People around the world are claiming that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. I'm going to just mention a few things and then I'm going to move over to the Chinese genocide, the actual genocide that's happening in Western China. First, why are there so many civilian deaths? Now, keep in mind, the Gaza health ministry is run by Hamas. And the more people that they can say have been killed, the more that they like that. They want that propaganda. Now, let's say that one of the reasons is, as you all know, they hide among civilians. Literally, it's a fact now. They have tunnels leading into, schools, mosques, hospitals. And they actually found a massive server farm underneath the UN building, the UNRWA, the United Nations body responsible for distributing aid among the people in Gaza. I don't know how they didn't know this, but in their basement, Hamas was running a massive server farm. Okay? Now, if you're an Israeli unit and you turn a corner, and there's a 5-story apartment block firing at you from multiple windows. And they shoot from one window, and then they drop down a floor. They shoot from a different window, and they just keep moving around throughout the windows. Who knows how many civilians are in there? But in order to stop taking such tremendous fire, the Israelis are, unless they want to bomb the whole building, they just put a tank shell through the side of it. And that's how Hamas fights. Yeah, I don't think this is disputed anymore. It's been proven. It's factual. Reporters have seen it themselves. The IDF, the Israeli Defense Forces, have put out enough videos to make this claim. It's no longer a speculation. It's a fact. Hamas is using civilian infrastructure, and that's how they fight. So Hamas controls the numbers. The Gaza Ministry of Health is controlled by Hamas, and they claim that 34,000 people have been killed. Okay, what you may not know is that Hamas also, number one, out of those 34,000, about 14 to 15,000 of those are Hamas soldiers. That's one thing they won't tell you. Another thing that they won't tell you is included in with these death tolls are anybody who dies of old age. They're putting that death, the Israelis killed them. Well, no, they were 85 and they died of old age. Cancer, disease, pestilence. Whether it's disease or natural causes, outside of the war zone, outside of being bombed, Hamas counts every single one of them. You have a heart attack and die? All right. Israel killed you. So they put those in those numbers, and it's not realistic because the Hamas runs the whole thing. Now, what I want to juxtapose is the Communist Party of China and the real genocide, because everyone around the world is saying that Israel is committing a genocide, a genocide, a genocide. I just gave you an example. You're around the block, an apartment building opens up from multiple stories. What are you going to do? Are you going to just ignore it because it's, quote, civilian infrastructure? No, they've made it into a military base from which to operate. So they'll put a tank shell through the wall. Otherwise, you have to storm the building, and that's mass casualties, or you can drop a bomb on the building, and the whole world will freak out. So they just put a tank shell in, and that's that. Now, why, when people talk about a genocide in Gaza, again, I want to elaborate. I want to push this home. 34,000 are supposedly have been killed. Of those, with regard to IDF, the Israelis, they say that they've killed about 14,000 Hamas fighters. So include that in the death toll. That's almost half. And then keep in mind the people who die of heart attacks, cancer, they're all included in that death toll, even if they weren't killed by Israelis. So why is nobody allowed to talk? Everyone's up in arms about genocide. Eurovision, this young woman, she was 20 years old. She worked her whole life to get where she ended up, which is on Eurovision, which is basically like an equivalent, an American equivalent to like American Idol, where you sing, everyone sings and stuff. Well, they boycotted the Israeli woman, 20 years old. It's a shame. She waited her whole life for this. But so they're all talking, everyone's yelling genocide, genocide, genocide. Number one, they don't know how Hamas fights. If they knew how Hamas fights, they wouldn't be saying that. But the Chinese, on the other hand, since the mid-90s, have been systematically persecuting and encamping the Uyghurs of Western China. Why is China allowed to put the Uyghurs in concentration camps? And it's a fact. No one dismisses it. Humanitarian groups around the world, including the United States, have condemned it. It's not a speculation. It's a fact. And you can look at satellite imagery and see these concentration camps. But nobody's doing anything. Nobody's saying a word in the UN. They're just allowed to do it. Now, I want to point you to one source that was very enlightening vis-a-vis the Uyghur situation in China. World Graphics. I'm just going to spell it. WARGRAPHICS. World Graphics. I've been following him for a long time. He seems to know his stuff, and he made a very compelling video. So if you want expansion on this, watch his video. Now, the Uyghurs are a Turkmen-based tribe. They're actually considered East Turkestan. And the difference between them and Beijing, now where the Uyghurs live is in Western China. The rest of the population generally lives in a population belt along the east coast of China. Now, the Uyghurs, there's about 10 to 12 million of them. And it's a Turkic ethnic group. It's in some ways, some people call it East Turkestan. And the campaign against the Uyghurs started in the mid-90s. Xi Jinping, basically the modern day Mao Zedong, Xi Jinping, the head of the Communist Party of China, was quoted in 2014. Let me read this quote. Quote, absolutely no mercy against the Uyghurs, end quote. As it stands right now, over 1 million Uyghurs are encamped in, quote, re-education centers. Does that sound familiar? Re-education centers. In 2017, these re-education camps, they forced upon there's a million in there. They forced upon them forced labor, forced sterilizations among the women, mass rape among the women in the women parts of the concentration camps, mass rape, sterilizations. And the United States has officially come out years ago and they said that this is a genocide. The Chinese are committing a genocide. Okay, the United Nations also says that the Chinese Communist government is conducting crimes against humanity. So there's really no middle ground here for the UN, for the United States to both say basically the same thing. There's a genocide going on. All right. Now, the CCP, the Communist Party, the CCP, the communists who run China, they have more than 1 million Uyghurs in re-education camps. International groups claim or condemn China across the globe. International groups condemn China, but nobody does anything. Nobody does anything. Torture methods include solitary confinement, lack of food, lack of sleep, stress positions where you're put into a chair and you're like bent forward at like a 90-degree angle with your arms out and you just stay there for 12 hours. All right, these are the types of torture methods that are used. Satellites confirm that these camps exist. Satellite imagery shows them. Nobody that I've seen on the international stage has denied the existence of these camps. The United States has said it's genocide. The United Nations has said it's crimes against humanity. It's kind of one and the same. The CCP, Xi Jinping, there's actually a lot of rumors about organ harvesting in these camps, where if somebody dies or maybe they might be killed, they'll harvest their organs. They take their organs out, and I don't know what exactly they do with them, but it's organ harvesting. So the difference between the people who are shouting that Israel's claim is committing genocide, when they take such great efforts to avoid civilian casualties, given that Hamas fights in hospitals, schools, mosques, residential apartment buildings, etc., which no one makes a difference of. When they fight out of those centers, and Israel has to respond by putting a tank shell in the middle of a residential building because there's 10 Hamas in there fighting at them, shooting out of the windows. Genocide, oh no. No, Hamas knows exactly what they're doing. And so the comparison is, why is the CCP allowed to do what they're doing to the Uyghurs? And everyone's condemned it. There's no question. Human rights groups, NGOs around the world, the United States, the UN, everyone knows what's going on. But they haven't done anything. Israel's fighting a force that relies on civilian infrastructure because they are a small, outnumbered group that, facing a modern military like the Israelis, they have the tactics that they use, and the tactics unfortunately work because it drives up civilian casualties. Israel's being accused of a genocide, as if they're going house to house, killing people. Well, actually, that's what happened on October 7th. That was a true genocide, when Hamas literally went door to door shooting people. People would go into their safe rooms in their house, and they'd throw in grenades to try to fire them out, and many people burned to death. So the question is, why is China allowed to treat the Uyghurs the way that they do? When everyone in the world doesn't deny it, they accept it, they understand it, they accept it, they know it. Nothing's done against China. There have been sparse sanctions because there's a large the northwestern region where the Uyghurs generally live in China, the northwest. They're known for their cotton production. So, the United States is putting sanctions on the cotton from China. But what is, re-education camps, what does it sound like? Does it kind of sound like the concentration camps of Nazi Germany? Maybe not, because they're not doing mass killings. But maybe the re-education centers in the Soviet Union post-World War II under Stalin, those were re-education camps, and aka concentration camps. Since it was a bipolar world at that point, it was the USSR and the Warsaw Pact versus NATO and the United States, etc. Nobody was really able to say anything. And I have a feeling that the reason that China is able to get away with this is because of their political clout throughout the world. The amount of money that they've given to different countries and then use economic blackmail against them in order to take advantage of them and their natural resources. Nobody's calling out China. This has been going on since 2017. Since 2017, over 1 million Uyghurs have been put into concentration camps. Since October 7th, the Israelis have launched an attack against a group that intentionally uses civilian infrastructure, as I just explained. Yet Israel's committing a, quote, genocide, trying to root out the rest of Hamas, specifically in Rafah right now in southern Gaza Strip. But China, year after, how many? 7 years. For 7 years, the Chinese have had these people, the Uyghurs, in re-education camps, concentration camps. There's more than 1 million. That doesn't matter. And nobody's saying that China's committing they are, but they don't do anything. Nobody's up to date on this. Hey, did you know that China is actually committing a genocide against its own people? What? Yeah. Check it out. Well, what about Israel? Oh, are you going to tell me Israel's committing genocide? Oh, they're committing genocide. Okay, genocide is door-to-door killing, intentionally, ethnic cleansing, repopulation, moving populations out of certain zones permanently. So what's the difference? Why is what Israel's doing in a defensive-esque, like they were destroyed on October 7th, and they're fighting against a group that potentially uses civilian infrastructure. The Chinese, they had problems since the mid-90s with the Uyghurs because they were considered an outside force, and they were considered in some instances to be terrorists because some of them were terrorists, and they used knife attacks on the subways in Beijing. But that doesn't allow Beijing to put this minority group within China into re-education camps. Forced sterilizations, mass rape, stress positions, lack of food, sleep deprivation. That's all I have for you. I hope you learned something, and just leave a comment if you want any more information. Thank you.